This is the Unpolished Manuscript audio recording session number 3, page number 5. What an experiment. What an experiment. Okay, so I've been very inspired by the famous autobiography of the Renaissance sculptor and artist Benvenuto Cellini, who is more famous for his book than for his sculpture, in part because it gives us a snapshot of what it was like to be an artist in the 1500s in Italy and France, on all levels of society. I read it while camping on a nude beach on Maui in 2002. It occurred to me that it might be helpful for people to get a clearer view of the life of the artist as it is today, not so much as a famous person or even as a so-called would-be emerging artist, but as a human being, another person with dreams and aspirations that they do their best to live up to and have come true. In December 1999, I was camped under an almond tree growing out of a wall on the roof of an abandoned Palestinian village on the edge of Jerusalem. And then in the Jerusalem forest on top of Mount Herzl for a week, reading Mark Twain's pseudo-autobiography of Huck Finn. Strange place to read it. Couldn't put it down, even after having worked as a stage tech at Harvard's American Repertory Theater on the original production of the musical version Big River before it went to Broadway and won all the Tonys. The autobiography of Malcolm X was a book I avoided reading all through school and college. It seemed to be everywhere, but one day, in a snowstorm in Buffalo, New York in 1980, I finally picked up a copy and read the first 100 pages in one sitting. It was so well written and engaging, honest, frank, and direct. It was really like meeting a person and hearing him tell you his story beyond the fact of his role as a cultural icon. And then I found out he was writing about my grandmother's neighborhood, where my mother grew up, and I spent a good part of my childhood on family holidays, and even started kindergarten there. It was then that I asked Mom about this and found out that she knew him. It took me a few years to get back to read the rest of the story, but I found in it a window into another dark chapter of my own family story. The story of my mother's only biological brother, Richard, who was Malcolm's contemporary, and who ran away to New York for the first time at 13 after committing an unspeakable act. Those first 2 years out of college, while I was hitchhiking and jumping trains all over the U.S., I traveled with a paperback copy of The Portable Nietzsche, which included a translation of his monumental work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and a plethora of his aphorisms. His work championed the idea of one who is forever engaged in self-overcoming. I took this in as sort of a form of secular Zen, which became a kind of guiding principle of my journeys. Later on, I picked up a copy of The Portable Kafka to fill my other pants pocket for those moments on the side of the road between rides. That he was able to communicate absurdity and the bizarre with such economy, and so effectively use the aphorism form as a means of expression, I found so appealing that this has inspired all of my work since, both written and visual. In the winter of my sophomore year at UMass, I was introduced to Zen Buddhism by my friend and head of residence, Vinnie Washington of Pittsburgh, PA. We also enjoyed the mental challenge of smoking pot, watching television, playing chess, and having an intellectual spiritual conversation all at the same time. This was our sacrilegious form of engaging in Dharma combat. For how can you win the argument and lose the game? And losing focus on the game or your place in the argument could lose you both. The object of the exercise was to share moments of pure consciousness. He let me borrow his dog-eared copy of Zen Bones, Zen Flesh, a collection of Zen koans and early writings. The idea of a bunch of words designed to trick the mind into enlightenment has had a lasting effect on the focus and goal of all my work and life since. I later borrowed, then got my own copy of Philip Kaplow's The Three Pillars of Zen, which I would call a definitive work on Zen practice. I took it home with me that summer and devoured the book, then went into retreat in my house, didn't come out of my room for 3 days except to use the toilet, meditating on enlightenment 24 hours a day, praying on enlightenment, focusing on enlightenment, and in the end realized there is nothing to realize. The effort was the purpose of the exercise, to impress the self to the worthiness of accepting what is already given. One of the koans I was meditating on is the classic, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" One day about a year ago, it just came to me, and I started laughing. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound that you hear when there is no sound, the divine vibration, the vibration by which all is manifest, the omnipresent, high-pitched hum-hiss sound that you can hear right this moment, and have been hearing and tuning out all of your life, the sound that I heard and communed with in the desert during my spiritual acceleration, the sound of divine consciousness. I love the koan as a literary form, primarily because it attempts to inspire enlightenment through the use of the fewest number of words, to pose an eternal question that is a pathway to the infinite divine. Everything I've done creatively has been an attempt to create a better Zen koan of sorts, and or to create the perfect aphorism. The short, concise, bizarre, uplifting story through the posing of a question that cuts to the chase and or short-circuits the mind through the smallest collection of words, or through a sparse few strokes of a drawing, or the choice of moment and light in the composition of a photograph, or a use of color and absence to make a painting. Even the video work is inspired by this economy of expression, saying the most with the least to inspire the highest. A paperback copy of Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces came to me towards the end of my first 2 years of hitchhiking around the country. In this work, Campbell charts the course of the hero's journey, stage by stage, chapter by chapter, using examples from all the cultural traditions of the world throughout all history. After traveling so far out on the edge, the fringe of the world, as a hitchhiker vagabond, it gave me a context and or overview to understand the course of my own journey, to recontextualize and make sense of my own experience, which really helped as my literal foundation crumbled when we lost our house to foreclosure in the fall of 1980, and I found myself carting all our family's stuff accumulated over the previous 22 years of life to the dump. What is the hero left with then? Where does the hero return to then, when he can never go home again?